Hey, welcome to Startup Security Weekly, episode 16. You know me, and you know I'm not Paul, but it's going to be a good show anyway. This week, Joshua Marpet, Scott Lyons are joining us. We're going to talk about all things startup in the security space with some twists and some ideas maybe you haven't heard yet. And then when we get to news, we're going to talk about some of the acquisitions and some of the trends that we're starting to see if we like them or not, and what it tells us for the future. We're going to talk about templates for better security, how as a manager you can learn how to lead but still stay in tech a little bit, and whether you like co-working or not, more people are moving into the space. We'll see if it works for you. All this week on Startup Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production.
From the top.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free, commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today.
I feel like I need to be dancing like Paul does. Get that energy going for everybody. But I got a sit-down desk, not a stand-up desk. It's Michael Santarcangelo here. Paul's out this week, but we didn't want the show to wait. The show must go on, and this was an opportunity. So we're going to be welcomed, and you're going to be welcomed. I'm going to be joined by Scott Lyons and Joshua Marpet. If you got to catch them on Security Weekly a couple weeks back, you might have thought, is this a Startup Security Weekly episode? They nailed it. They did really well. So this was a perfect opportunity to have the guys in to join us. So Scott, Josh, welcome to Startup Security Weekly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow, look at that. Clean audio. You guys are sexy looking. This is great. So here's kind of the setup and what we're going to talk about in the beginning. You guys have a lot of experience looking at the world of startups. Josh, you've done your own startup. You've got a lot of experience through it. You've been through the incubator accelerator programs. Scott, you've done the same. You've both talked to me a lot since that show, and I've learned a lot from you guys. So we wanted to bring some of that forth today a little bit. Josh, why don't we start with you? So we talked about it. If they didn't see Startup Security Weekly or Security Weekly, what's some of your startup experience?
Good Lord. So I went through Mach 37, which I actually happen to be wearing their shirt, and down in Herndon, Virginia, an accelerator, started a startup company called Bijoti, worked it through as long as we could and got pretty close to actually taking off pretty well with a product and customers and everything. But then due to runway problems and investment problems, which is really cogent to what we're talking about today, we shut it down. And since then, I've been working at Avar and doing some other things as well. So I've been around the block.
Give us a little bit, what was it? I mean, I'm curious, what gave you the idea? How did you get started? You had to apply to Mach 37. Take us through some of that, because I know a lot of the folks listening to us they're working day jobs right now, and they're grinding it out, and they're saying, oh, but I got an idea. Where do we go with that? And I know you and Scott both have some ideas on this, but let's talk about your experience first, Josh. So were you working a day job? You had an idea? Talk us through some of how that started.
You know, I was working a day job. At the time, I was running a small consultancy, which was effectively myself and bringing in people when I needed to. And I was doing okay. But I was bothered because there were a lot of people that were trying to take their small businesses and make them secure, and they didn't have any way to do it. They literally were like, well, beyond antivirus and maybe buying a Sophos box firewall, what do I do? there was nothing there for them. Unless they wanted to get really hardcore technical, they couldn't do anything. So we said, all right, let's see if we can figure something out that we can give away. And actually, it's an interesting story. The First Data let go of about 1,600 people in Denver, and I'm a member of 303, which is a hacking crew that started DEF CON practically, and runs Sky Talks and does all sorts of different things. And quite a few of the 303 crew were let go. So we said, we need to get them a job, a business, something. And we said, okay, why don't we build them a way to have a small business MSP and MSSP, an MSSP in a box, a sock in a box, if you will. Let's build it and give it to them, and then they can go find 20 businesses and make a living off of doing that. And it was great. I mean, we had great ideas. We put together all sorts of interesting things that we could work on. We started working on it, a few of us that volunteered our time, and we realized this is a lot of work. We'll do it, but we've got to do some way of actually getting compensated for it. So we said, all right, let's figure out how we can do that. And literally the next day, I was at a conference. I think, was it ShmooCon? No, it wasn't ShmooCon. It was DerbyCon, I believe, in Louisville. And Bob Stratton was there. And I talked to him about something that somebody else had mentioned to me. And I'm like, what do you think of this idea? And he goes, it's okay. I'm like, all right, cool. I just wanted to ask. And I turn around and I'm talking to somebody else, and I mention this sock in a box and MSSP in a box. Bob grabs me by the shoulder, spins me around, and says, pitch that to me now. Okay.
Really?
Seriously, no joke. So I pitched Mach 37 on that idea. They loved it. And they said, you've got to do this, because the mid-market is something that we're desperately concentrating on. And they were, and they still are, because the mid-market is effectively defenseless. So I pitched them. They accepted us as a cohort company in the fall of 2014. And I went through 3 months of getting my brain stuffed with info.
Because as everybody knows on the show here, we always talk about pitching. And this time, I thought we weren't, and here we are. We're going to talk about it. So, all right. So Bob Stratton, and Bob has been on Security Weekly. We're going to get him on Startup Security Weekly as well. Tremendous wealth of knowledge. So It seems like on one hand, you put yourself in a place where you were willing to talk about what you're working on, and somebody serendipitously heard you and went, whoa, stop. I like that. Come talk to me. But then you still had to pitch them. So did you already have a pitch deck ready, or were you suddenly in, I've got to build a pitch mode? I
got to build a pitch mode. I had to pitch them on the phone and in Skype, actually. And then I had to go in person to Herndon, which for me is not horrible. It's a couple hours away, and pitch them in person at the CIT building. And then I had to wait 2 or 3 weeks, biting my nails roughly to my elbow, for them to answer me and tell me if I got in. And so I built a pitch deck for the Skype, just mostly for me, because it was mostly just a question and answer session. And then I built a full formal pitch deck for them. And I look back at it, and it's terrible. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's horrifyingly bad, how bad it is. But I built it, and I was proud of it at the time. We did the best we could, and we got in. So it did its purpose. It actually performed. But yeah, it was. I didn't know how to pitch at the time. I mean, I knew how to talk. I've been public speaking for years, decades at this point. Oh dear God. But pitching is a whole different world.
It's funny, those differences. All right, so now that we got Scott here, how did you two meet?
Oh boy. Well, Josh and I have known each other in the security world for about a minute now. And it wasn't until recently when we started really understanding where the synergy was between the two of us and what our ideals are and what our background has been that has led us to the moment. A lot of people don't understand the fact that when you meet somebody, you're meeting a combination of the events in their past to bring them to what you see. And, it's a real toss-up whether or not you're able to get along with that person, whether you're able to communicate, whether you're able to flow ideas freely, and be able to bounce ideas off of the other person, which to me is super important. I want to be able to throw an idea out and then watch it just tangent along. And Josh and I do that with each other all the time, right? My background was a couple of years ago. I had a contract over at one of those we're not going to talk about it places in Maryland fall into my lap, where I had the ability to team up with a larger prime. And then it was, well, let's figure out what do we need. We need our business registered. We need our DUNS. We need to figure out who the partners are, how shares are going to be gone. We went through all of this work, and the prime didn't win the contract. And we're like, well, crap. Might as well go back to our, our 9 to 5. But there's been other opportunities that have fallen into my lap for me to stand up a company that I think are going to be a win. But as Josh was saying, being an entrepreneur in this industry, let alone any industry, is difficult. It is not an easy road, right? And that's why we talked about in our presentation at Derby, do you really want to start a business? Because great, you may have one contract, but you need to have more contracts or more work or more money coming in the door to really sustain your quality of life.
Yeah, I think that's a big surprise for a lot of people, even if they step out and they just want to do some independent contracting, or they're trying to explore busting out right into what we'd call the gig economy. But so let's go back then. So you both have some pretty good experience. You both work well together. What was the idea for that original talk? Where did that come from?
Oh God, honestly, that talk was that talk was really just for S&Gs. That talk was like,
that's funny.
Hey, what the hell? Let's talk about business and how people in technology suck at it. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And we put together a talk, and we started like socializing the talk with people, saying, hey, would you be interested in listening to this, just to get feedback? And people were like, yes, we want to hear about that. And so we're like, okay, maybe we should do more than one talk. Let's build a series of 6 talks and figure out, the series of them, and not build each talk, but at least where are they all going? How do they connect? And people were just, when can we see that talk? When can we see that one? When? It's like, oh, wow, we'll get there. Give us a minute. And it worked. People are fascinated. So we call it the Business for Technologists talk series, and we're rolling with it.
Yeah, our most recent installation of the B4T Business for Technologists series was at PumpCon. We have presentation submissions into SHMU. We know we're presenting at InfoSec World. We are thinking about a couple others that, as we go through the iterations of how businesses work and run, we're realizing it's not just 6 talks. It's actually a lot more than just that.
Yeah.
But the nitty gritty about it is we want to focus on being able to take an idea all the way through what happens when you need to sell. Right. So we run the gambit of all of that in our talks. Right. And both Josh and I are very, very passionate about business, about being entrepreneurs, about striking out on our own and making a name for ourselves and doing business off of our own back. So, both of us could euphemistically say that we've been through the school of hard knocks without an MBA, without an EMBA, with barely anything behind us, but we see how business works and we see how it runs. So as technologists, we sit back and we say, okay, if A equals B, then why doesn't B equal F, right? As business people, it's A equals Z, which then parlays into M with the summation of 2.
I just want to point out that as mathematicians, we're horrified by this. But
I was going to say, I have a background in economics, and I'm a little confused, so it's good. But let me offer something else, and we'll have to confirm this with Paul. But I am 99% certain Paul's going to be in InfoSec World. I'm hosting the CISO Leadership Summit the day before InfoSec World. I'm on at least one panel while we're there, and so I feel like we need to plan like a little startup night where anybody who's going to be in InfoSec World and is interested in startups, we'll make ourselves available. I think they have adult beverages where we'll be, and if that's your thing, it'll be fun. But we should definitely get some folks together and talk about that. So we do have some questions we like to ask people. I'm going to ask them for you guys, and I'm just kind of curious what you would then tell people. So you've got at least a 6-part series. And as I've learned looking at the same thing is you start with 6 parts, then you get into it and you're like, well, it's more like a 30 part. So, okay, it's more like a 4-year. Okay, it's more like a lifetime. So, of course, this will grow. But in your experiences, somebody coming to you and saying, hey, I got this idea for a security startup. What would you tell them is unique about a security startup that might be different than other types of startups?
That's a great question. And the answer is that, at least to me, is that a security startup has a very, very hard road ahead of it. Reason much more than any other kind of startup. Reason being is that in this economy, people look at information security and go, "Ooh, there's money there." And so everybody is doing Me Too startups. Hey, they do that. They do, I don't know, firewalls. Let me build a better firewall. And it may be a better firewall. It may be just a different, slightly different iteration of a firewall that's already out there. It's a next generation firewall 0.1 or 0.001 difference. But they're like, I'm going to make $14 billion off of it. Maybe not, because there's 40 other firewall companies coming up right behind you or right in front of you or right next to you. So the competition is monstrous. So security startups have a very hard road because there is money there. You know, you build a better toothbrush, there's already 40 other toothbrush companies. You better be really spectacular. But the toothbrush companies have been there for 100 years. You're not going to see that much competition, okay? Security, there's monstrous competition every day. I was just listening, actually about 6 months now, I was talking to somebody from a company who cannot be named because I'm going to be polite to her. And she said there's 1,800 to 2,200 security startups in the last few years alone, and 9/10 of them are going to go away in a bloodbath.
Yep.
Let me ask a question on that, because Scott, I'd love your opinion too, but you know, I'm going to go back to when podcasting all got started, and you know, Paul and has been doing this obviously since the beginning. There was a time I did it early on too, and so that's when he used to have all these conventions, and it was a very small knit community of people globally who did podcasting. I'll never forget sitting down with somebody having a conversation and kind of lamenting all the new people coming in, and he looked at me and he said, "No, Michael," he said, "this is great. You want all those people to come in." And you want some of them to fail. You want some of them to succeed. He goes, because the point is, the more people entering into it, the higher it rises up, the harder it will get to progress to the next level. But those that rise up will be better. That's always kind of stayed with me. Do you think that's going to work that way then for security startups? I mean, you know, 2,000 feels like a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than that. So is it good then that a lot of them will fail and that people will learn from the experiences, but the ones that survive are going to survive because they're better? Or do you guys see it a little bit differently?
Well, you know, one of the other factors that I think we're forgetting is the buyout option, right? There's going to be large companies, and we're going to start to see this very soon. It's going to be part of the bloodbath where large companies really like what smaller companies are doing, and they buy them out and sit them on the shelf and don't do anything with them for 3 to 5 years. So the company's effectively dead. Right. When you're looking at the future of security, right, you have to keep in mind that technology is only 5%. Right. So in that 5% of every business, where is your security startup going to be? A business is going to look at you and say, so what? You know, I got 20 other vendors that'll do this for me. What makes you the special petunia in the flower garden that stands out?
Has to be a petunia?
Yeah, well, you know, petunia, sunflower.
If you can tiptoe, you can go through the tulips. That'd be okay too.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yeah.
So there's also the barrier to entry question. And the barrier to entry is if you've got 100 startups that come into the same arena, firewalls, let's say, I'm just picking on firewalls, and you've got 50 of them are just minuscule iterations of one of them. Which one will succeed? Well, sometimes the one that started the whole thing will fail because the second mover advantage kicks in, because they're locked into choices that they made, and the second company realizes some of them were bad choices and fixes those choices and wins. But effectively, your friend was right. As more and more companies jump into an arena, and some of them will die, some of them will fail, some of them will exist on 5 clients, but they're okay. And some of them will succeed wildly. To overtake those companies, which are now spending money on R&D and S&G, sales and marketing, you've got to either be very well funded, be very well connected, have an amazingly different idea which you can actually implement. That's the tough one. Or all of the above, and probably all of the above at this rate. We operate in an arena where the pace is faster than internet time, effectively.
This is not one of our normal questions, but I'm kind of curious from your take on it. And maybe we need to start making this one of our normal questions. How important is it then? So, Scott, if the tech is only 5%, and we've talked about that a lot on this program, and we've looked at what the investors are looking for, and they're looking for team, and they're looking for all sorts of other stuff. Right. How important is it then to be able to communicate your idea such that not just the buyer gets it, but the buyer gets it, the people around them get it, the investors get it, the marketplace gets it. Like, where would you put the premium on being able to communicate what you've done clearly versus, no, but I've got really cool tech, this is a meritocracy, people will see it, we're going to kick ass?
Well, there's a couple of things that you have to look at. First off is there a budget for it, right? So the person that you're talking to, can they cut the check for it, right? Do they understand your position? Can they empathize with your position, right? Will they give you, at the very least, a demo, right? All of this comes down to how you pitch and how you select who your clientele is, right? And that's extremely important. Right. To go back to what you were talking about earlier with how do you pitch something, right? As an example, when I used to work for some media company in Silver Spring, I'm not going to say which one it was, what I used to do is to teach my interns when they came in the door, they didn't know what they were doing, to teach my interns about the 2-minute speech or the 10-second speech, right? We'd go in and we'd ride the elevator inside the company. And as people got on and off of the elevator between the floors, that's how much time my interns had to be able to throw the pitch at people, right? So when somebody comes in, hi, I'm Scott Lyons. I'm part of the information security team. Did you know that this month is Security Awareness Month? Oh, you didn't? Well, listen, here's my card, right? Or here's a link on the card. Please go to it, watch the videos. You can take it home to your family. You can show it to everybody, all of your friends, right? And thanks, done, bang, it's done. So now,
so you did a legitimate elevator pitch. You did the real.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You really
did a
got
real elevator pitch.
Elevator.
Yeah, real elevator pitch. But the reason being is the more that you do that, because it's uncomfortable to you, whether it be a social setting or a one-on-one personal setting, the easier it is for you to be able to explain your ideas in a very succinct, direct, and straightforward manner. Right. Yep. Versus sitting back and saying, well, should I say this? I don't know if I should say this. Listen, every person you talk to puts their pants on just like you do. There is really nothing besides position, power, and money that will separate you from that person. So what's the harm in walking up to him and saying hello? Last night Josh and I found ourselves at the ICIT Congressional Black Tie Gala. Shout out to ICIT, by the way. Those guys, they're doing great stuff. If you don't know who they are, go look them up, right? But we found ourselves there, and we were in the situation where we were talking to the de facto CIO of the United States and his fiance. We were also interfacing with General Alexander, who's now the CEO of IronNet. His company, it's over in Fulton, Maryland. Talk about pressure, right? So having to come in and step in and start talking about issues that they find relevant to their budgets to move their companies forward, and then being able to, on the fly, turn and say, well, how do I take my services and my offerings and skill sets and provide it to these guys to get them to say, yes, we want to do work with you. We like what you're saying. We codify and signify and empathize with everything that you're about. Let's do business. So the real question is where's the elevator pitch in that? Where is the sales pitch? How do you talk to these people efficiently? And that's actually defined in one of our 6 talks.
Effectively, you've got 7 seconds to get a value proposition out there. If you don't get a value proposition out there, it doesn't matter how cool your tech is. You're done. And as a matter of fact, Tony Scott, who Scott was just mentioning, the CIO of the United States, I was just chatting with his fiance and helping her figure out a value prop for her new company. She just joined a new company, and we were just talking about the product. I'm like, oh, you should spin it this way. People will understand and respect that as a value proposition. She's like, oh, I never thought of that. Thank you. It's just a lovely conversation. Then the CIO of the United States walks up and goes, hi, this is my fiance. It's like, oh, wow. Hi, nice to meet you. It was grand.
Yeah, so the interesting trend that I heard from both of you, I just want to point out to people is, well, first of all, I didn't know everybody else jumped off their bed into their pants to get them on. So it's neat to know I'm not alone in that. But broader, it's the idea of just go up to people, just go have that conversation. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to like you. They're going to give you a scowly face. But it's good practice, right? And the more you practice it, the more comfortable you get with it. But the other part then that I keep hearing from you, Josh, and I like this, that's why I want to amplify it. You put yourself in a situation to be successful. You lead with value. You offer people value. You're happy to talk to them. You're happy to listen to them. You're happy to help them. And you seem to be, you have a knack for putting yourself in a position where good things will happen. And then you're ready to take care of it. So both of you have a services background. But Josh, you were looking at doing a product stuff. Scott, you've got experience doing product stuff now too. What's it like transitioning from being in the services? Because a lot of people who are in security, we start operationally, actually, almost all of us, well, at least maybe I'm old enough. Most of us started operationally. At some point, you move into looking at it in other ways. What was that transitions like? Or if there's somebody listening to us today saying, "Oh, I've got a product idea," but they're not a products person, what's one of the differences they got to look out for?
Oh, that's a great question.
Wow.
Services are very different from product in a few very interesting ways that people don't really think about. Let me start with the basic one. You get paid fast with services. You sell fast with services. You say, I can do IDS. Okay, I'm just picking something out of the air here. And you know what? Somebody needs IDS. Go start working the next day. And you are making money on an hourly basis or daily or weekly or yearly or whatever it is. And then after a while, you get this magic thing called a check, and life is good. I pay my mortgage, I pay my bills, and everybody's happy. When you sell a product, you have to A, build the product, B, trademark the product, C, patent the product potentially. You have to find investors to actually build the product, because remember, you may have built a prototype from stuff from Adafruit in your backyard, but when you want to build 1,000 of them, they might need to be UL tested. They might need to be, manufactured in China, because that's where we can manufacture stuff these days. You're going to need the money up front for that manufacturing. Let's assume it's a software product, so there's no hardware involved. Okay, great. You've still got to code it. You've got to put it through QA testing. You've got to put it through, make sure that no antivirus is going to pick it up as a virus, because God knows they do some weird things these days. You've got to have developers. You've got to have DevOps. You've got to have servers to run it on and test it on. You've got to test it on every iteration of every device it could run on. I could go on. It's expensive. And then, by the way, after all that, you can start selling it. And you got to find somebody who needs it, who has a spend for that type of product, who wants or needs that exact product, and you've got to make nice with them so that you can actually sell them the product. And then they go, well, I have 4 other anti-malware things already. You're just another anti-malware. You're like, no, but we're crowdsourcing our anti-malware to push it through a threat intelligence vortex of tsunami-like size that will then Fnord, and just basically buzzword your way into a sale, right? Of course.
I feel like you've done this once or twice, because, man, that's the pitches I get all the time. No, that's good. All right, I've got a couple more questions, so I want to get through, because you guys have good experience here. All right, so Josh, I'm going to come to you for this one. Scott, next one's for you. What are the investors looking for in security startups? Josh, as you're out talking to people, as you're looking at these different types of things, from an investor perspective, what do they want to know, security startups?
Okay, there's 2 or 3 things. There's 2 or 3 things that an investor wants to know. One, how good is your team? How good is your traction? In other words, how many sales have you actually made? Where's your pipeline? It's all about sales. Because remember, to them, it's about money and risk and time. So if the team is good, they're not going to need to spend much time helping you along. If the product is good, then the risk is lower that they'll be sued, that they'll have a problem with it, whatever. And if your traction is good, you've actually proven that people will do this magic thing called spend money on it. You're taking away the risk that it'll be a total failure. So that's literally all they're looking for. They're looking to de-risk, and that is a term of art for investment. They're looking to de-risk their time, their money, and their effort, okay? So if you have a good team, a good product, and good traction, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, so no pressure, right? But I mean, it's an important thing to note. I like how you distilled it down. All right, Scott, this one's for you. Best opportunities that you see today for security startup. Somebody listening right now, they maybe got an idea in their head, or they're looking at a couple different ideas. Based on what you see, based on the people that you get to rub elbows with, which, I don't get to do that here in Myrtle Beach too often, where would you tell somebody right now, this seems like an area that's going to get a lot of attention?
Oh boy, that's a really, really great question, and asking me to come up with the answer on the fly. Whoa.
Well, I'll give you a minute to think about it.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a minute to think about it.
No. We can do this. Go ahead, Scott.
We can do this.
You want me to hump Jeopardy?
If I had to pinpoint one opportunity, I would really have to say end user training. Coming up with a company that specializes in end user training. The reason that I'm saying this is, what is the bane of information security people's existence as it stands right now, right?
Users.
And that's the question that drives the answer, right? End user training. I mean, what companies that are out there right now really specialize in hitting the end user and getting the end user and their family to understand our value proposition or
Wait.
what our
Are you
stance.
saying that my kid shouldn't play on my laptop, my work laptop, and play his games? I don't
No,
understand.
I'm saying
What's the
they
problem with
completely
that?
can. Yeah, they completely can. But at the same time, corporations, if you're going to do that and you're going to allow family to play on your laptop, corporations should set up a guest account on their
All right,
machines.
so that's an interesting
Right?
point. Let me chime in something I think is also interesting. I hosted a leadership summit earlier this week, and one of the examples we did with a panel that we hosted was the guy said, "Look, I started looking at how to help people understand security better." I've obviously been vocal on this topic a lot. I don't like calling people users, and I'm always careful with the cognitive dissonance to it. So here's the point of what he did. He said, I wanted to get through to people better, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't killing them with stuff that they didn't care about. He ended up hiring a teacher. And the teacher had actually kind of talked him into it. He was saying, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And the guy said, you hire a teacher. He's like, look, I don't have to have a degree in math to know how to teach math. I understand how people learn, and I can go figure it out. And so so to your point, I guess I think it's an interesting idea. I'd like to see somebody actually invest in how we learn. Like, please stop telling me the answer is let me just show you a lot of videos when you make a mistake. That's not the right time. So that's interesting. All right, so Josh, where would you tell somebody to focus?
So I'm going to redirect for one quick second because at B-Sides Delaware, my conference, Spawn Camp, our kids event, we actually have our education department from Wilmington University send people over and they build events for the kids. We had one teach basic cryptography, Caesar cipher and Pigpen cryptography. The kids had such a blast. And the teacher was like, I can teach this to any class. This is awesome. It teaches math. It teaches logical thinking. Yep. She was ecstatic. So I think it's a great idea. Sorry, irrespectively. My thought actually is sort of the opposite of Scott's, although I agree with him entirely. I think there's also a lot of possibilities and ideas out there around data, whether you call it big data analytics or how do I look at data, how do I see data. There's so much cool stuff going on with graph-based learning, with machine learning, with if you want to call it artificial intelligence, that's fine. But there's so many cool things going on that require nothing more than a computer and a really, really flexible mind to play with. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
All right, so we got a question on the live feed. Let me ask you guys this question. So you've got a product, and Josh, you took us to the idea of how you move to a product, you put it together. You got to start talking about it. We talked to Adam Bixler last week, and he talked about going through the process of getting a provisional patent and getting your actual patent. And so what we're asked on the live feed is, so how do you protect your product? Once you've got your product, you're the early stages, you're talking to people about it, and you need them to help you because you got to get that initial lift. What do you do to protect it?
Okay, so I'll give you the basic corporate answer, and then maybe Scott can chime in because he's actually doing that with the product now. But the basic corporate answer is, because remember, once you start doing this, you're now a corporation building a product. You can do things like NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, but they're really asking someone to trust you and for you to trust them. Because honestly, it's really difficult to prosecute them in court. So you can do an NDA, you can do a non-compete, you can do all sorts of paperwork that basically says, please don't screw me, okay? But at the end of the day, venture capitalists will not sign NDAs. There's a lot of groups of people that won't sign NDAs. Matter of fact, I'm having a hard time signing NDAs to a certain extent, just because we deal with so many startups now. So it's difficult, but it's possible. You go to people that are trustworthy. You go to people that you would be willing to go to business with. And when you go to get validation, which is not necessarily people you would go into business with, but people you would sell to, you don't have to give them all the nitty-gritty technical details. You ask them, you have a problem X, Y, and Z. If I could solve this problem with this type of solution, would that be interesting to you? And they go, yeah. You don't have to tell them all the nitty-gritty technical details about it. You just tell them what it'll do for them specifically.
I think it's an interesting point. I want to point that out because we talk about that a lot on this program, which is it's benefits over features. But when we come out of the technology world, we get enamored with the features, and it becomes really easy to fall into that trap of, hey, I can help you solve XYZ problem. Oh, tell me more? Awesome. You got time? I've got this really cool map and this Visio, and I'm going to take you through it. And what you're pointing out is you don't have to do it that way. You can help them understand that you can get them where they need to be. You can be a little bit smarter about it, and you don't necessarily have to give it all away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the smartest thing you can do is why give anybody the nitty gritty technical details unless you've got one or two technical people that you want to bring on or that you want the technical advisors. Everybody else should get a general overview, a benefit statement, how it works in general details,
and give them some proof, right? Give them confidence that it works. Scott, does that match up to your experience? Because we're about to wrap this part up and move on to the news of the week.
Yeah, actually, it does. So I wonder if this will. I wonder if this will work. Does it work? No. Okay, it doesn't. I was going to try to share my screen out to show what I'm. Okay, so currently I work for War Collar Industries, right? And the product that you're alluding to is the Dope Scope. So anybody can go up to warcollar.com and look at our products page, and you'll see absolutely everything that you want to know about the Dope Scope. Now, the fun part about this is that this product was built for S&Gs, right? It was built as a marketing tool of, hey, we do IoT stuff. But in the past 3 weeks, we've sold well over 100 of these, and we're very happy with how they're moving forward, right? The next version of it is going to be light years ahead of what you're seeing with that right now, right? So the next version is going to include 5G, Bluetooth, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Just wait for it; it's coming. So when you're talking about a product that you want to have, there's a couple of key points that you need to already have in place. One, you need somebody who understands product engineering, right? Two, you need somebody that can work with you with overseas vendors to get the engineering done. And then three, you need to have it completely tested, right? So whether it's UL or if it includes Wi-Fi, is there a Wi-Fi spectrum analysis that's been done on it?
It shouldn't blow up.
Say what?
It shouldn't blow up. It's important.
No.
It shouldn't blow up.
No, and hopefully as long as it's not a washing machine or a phone.
Samsung. What? I'm sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. It shouldn't blow up. So, there's different types of there's different facets. Sorry, let me digress. There's different facets of talking points when you're dealing with products. You're dealing with production. You're dealing with who you're bringing in to help you design and move it forward, and then you're also talking about liability. Samsung. So you really have to understand the full gambit of what you're looking at before you step into that arena. You have to think about every single move on the chessboard before you even think about touching a piece, right? You need to know every little nuance.
So this is so what you're also explaining is of the 90% of startups that are not going to go as people expected on their first go, you're going to get some of that hard-fought experience that will inform you the next time around. And I just, and this is where we'll close it up. As expected, fun conversation. I know we're going to have more of these conversations. Paul chimed in. He said he is going to be in InfoSec World, and I think it was something along the lines of, and who doesn't like adult beverages? So I think we got a date in some time down in Orlando in the beginning of next year where we'll get a chance to talk about some of this stuff in person, and I envision that's going to be a fun, animated conversation. But what I would take from this is, if you're interested, you've got people in this program that are part of this program, that support this program, that are going to support you. There's things that you can do, and even if your first time out of the gate isn't the smashing success, as long as you've learned from it, you're going to build on it, and you will be more successful. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about some stories this week, and we're going to take a look at what's happening in the security space, as well as some of those other things we talked about at the top of the show. We'll be back in a minute.